All right, you lovely people. Let's finish up this module on prejudice, bias, and quotas. Ooh, it's exciting. Again, we're doing this applied ethics, asking how do we get women and other underrepresented groups into leadership positions, especially in businesses and corporations. And now we've seen Rachel's argument about quotas. Again, he's talked about there being implicit bias at play in decisions, and that how quotas can help us at least weaken and dampen the influence of those prejudices and biases. But Rachel's, he's not a fool. He knows that quotas can be quite controversial in America. And so he does consider some common objections that have been made against quotas and why he thinks his approach doesn't have those problems, or, he can get around those problems. So here first, I'm going to show you just a quick little video from the news a few years ago now, I think, that came out about quotas. And I think this summarizes pretty much the objection against them.
The number of women which are inhabiting management roles in Norway has not increased. Obviously, the number of women on boards has increased. The experience level on those boards has decreased because the number of women that are really qualified based on their past experience to be on those boards is not high enough to support the gender quotas. And that's unfortunate. And the reason why I think that's particularly unfortunate for women is that now we have women on these boards who are not really, they don't have the experience to be there, they don't have the background to be there. And so I think it kind of gives women in high-level executive positions a bad name.
Yeah, so people often respond to quotas by saying, hey, look, you're going to give an inexperienced or unqualified woman a job. And obviously, it's bad to give an inexperienced or unqualified woman a job. And indeed, I've heard women in business tell me a lot that they hear this. This is pretty common. Again, as I mentioned, they're told that they're unseasoned. They need a little more seasoning, or they're just not ready yet. Maybe in a few years. And yet the problem is they never seem to be seasoned enough. They never seem to be ready enough. They watch the men advance their careers, but the women often find they hit a plateau and things start to stall, and it can be quite frustrating. And so again, the objective concern here, the objection that's made in the video is that, yeah, you're giving an inexperienced or unqualified woman a job. Now, Rachel's response, I think, is actually almost cute. Is that weird to say? It's a cute little response, because he'll say, and I love this, you can just imagine him. I wonder if he wore glasses. I have to look. I don't think he did, but I wish I had a picture of him. I'll shoot one up. Maybe I'll find one. Anyway, I can imagine him just kind of like going, well, inexperienced or unqualified according to whom? To the people that might be in the grips of implicit bias against women? So of course they're going to think that this woman is inexperienced or unqualified. Because again, experience and qualifications have an inherently subjective element of what counts as experience or what counts as being qualified. This is still a subjective human judgment. It's not something a computer can do because, again, they've worked at the company for years. Oh, but that was a small company. Well, no, it actually was a big company. Oh, but they never did any major initiatives at that company. Well, what about these initiatives? And you list off some and you say, oh, those are just PR initiatives that don't have any substance. And so the rationalizations go on and on, as we've seen, is that we're not aware of these biases, but we come up with all these excuses, not experienced enough. And then you show that there could be experience. Oh, but it's the wrong kind of experience. Well, what kind of experiences do you want? And then you try to show examples of it. And they're like, oh no, it's something else now. You won't believe how many times I've heard stories like this. It can be very frustrating because again, when the objection is made that you're going to promote unqualified or inexperienced women, we can ask, unqualified according to whom? You're acting like a computer has made these decisions when no, it's a person with subjective human judgment making these decisions. So we have to be humble in these respects. So again, that's, I think, how you'd respond. You'd just say, well, you're saying that we're hiring unqualified women. Well, who says they're unqualified? It sounds like these are the same people who may have the implicit bias, which the whole point of quotas is to fix. Now, a similar argument is made that we should hire and promote using merit, not gender. And once again, Rachel's will give his cute little response. He's saying, well, again, who is deciding who has or has not merit? It's humans, again, with implicit biases. There isn't a computer that can quantify for us what merit looks like. So it's easy to say we should hire on merit, but again, it's going to be a subjective people deciding what's worthy of merit and what's not. And not, it's not like a computer program can run this. Sometimes you're going to meet the most talented, gifted people who are on paper, look like a train wreck, and vice versa. I've met so many people that on paper, I thought I was going to be meeting a genius, and I met someone who was pretty mediocre, and I was very bummed and sad at those encounters. I really looked forward to meeting this smart person, and I was like, this is them? On paper, they looked great, but in person, I'm profoundly disappointed. So again, that's a subjective, that was my judgment. I could be totally wrong. It's just my point is that things don't always track so easily. And that, of course, the whole point is that gives implicit bias the gateway. So again, if we're using Rachel's 4 conditions, he says quotas will help ensure that merit is taken into consideration, because when you hire the woman, when you're forced to hire the woman, you will hire the one with the most merit. And odds are that is going to be a pretty dang good woman because, we're good at that, at picking when we're restricted in our choices without having other people or other candidates confuse us and allow the bias to kick in. Because otherwise, Rachel's would say is like, again, this person says hire and promote using merit, not gender. And Rachel's would say, yes, I agree. Unfortunately, it's prejudice and bias that's causing us to hire more males. So again, we're hiring based on gender. The quotas are supposed to shift it towards merit, not the other way around. It gets it backwards, he says. It's a very fascinating little argument there. Again, it's cute. Whether you believe it or not, I'll leave it to you to decide, but I think it's pretty interesting, to say the least. Now, another argument is made that it's not the fault of white males, that there had been discrimination and racism and slavery or whatever in the past. That's the past. Why punish the white males today for the past actions of their ancestors? And again, Rachel's response to this is brilliant, because he says, look, I'm not talking about past injustice. My view of quotas is not to correct the mistakes of the past. Maybe we need to correct the mistakes of the past. That's a tough issue, but that's not what Rachel says. That's not what I'm talking about today in this paper. He says, I want to correct current biases that exist right now, the current implicit and biases. Now, look, maybe those implicit biases are influenced by that history. I don't know. That's a different story, though. Again, he thinks quotas will help correct and, dampen the current biases that favor white straight men. So it's interesting. I will say, I think of that is probably the most powerful point he makes in this, that he's not interested in correcting the past. That's a different argument. His argument is about the now and correcting the biases that exist now. And then finally, he does mention that people might worry there's a slippery slope. In Pittsburgh, we would call it a slippy slope. My wife would call it. My wife used the word slippy once, and I was like, what the heck does that mean? I had to Google it. I guess it's a Pittsburgher word for slippery. So there's a slippy slope, a slippery slope. Do you guys use slippy in New York, Western New York? I don't know. I guess I'll find out when it gets slippy outside. We got a few months, I hope. Anyway, what was I talking about? Slippery slope. Yes, because we might think, well, today it's quotas for women and persons of color, but we'll end up with quotas for everything. Like maybe those quotas for the short people. It's just quotas. You get a quota, you get a quota, you get a quota. They're all over the place. Now, Rachel says 2 sorts of responses to this slippery slope or this slippy slope like argument. He says, look, this is the first argument. He says, look, not everything is going to satisfy these 4 conditions or these 4 criteria for quotas that we talked about in the previous video. And not only does it have to satisfy those 4 items, because heightism might satisfy those 4 items, he does say this has to be a serious social problem that must be addressed. And again, he doesn't seem to think heightism is a current social problem. Small people like me seem to be doing just fine. I have a job. But am I making less than the tall people? I don't know. I think we gotta go to Mayor Brown, man. Mayor Brown! Think of the little man!
Let me hold you, little man. We'll make believe you can fly.
Anyway, I'll stop. So that's the first one. It's like, the slippery slope is stopped because we have to satisfy 4 conditions and have a serious social issue that we want to address. He thinks women, persons of color, definitely fit the 4 criteria and are a social concern when you look at the numbers. And then he does say, though, look, if this is an issue of social concern, though, what's wrong with quotas? I mean, he does say at the end, look, if we find out tomorrow heightism is a real social problem, then quota that thing up, man. Quota. Because he says, what's wrong with that? If, again, decisions are satisfying the 4 criteria and this is a social issue, it sounds like we need to do something. We have to fix these implicit biases. And he says, what's wrong with that? And so put the quotas where they're needed. But again, we stop the slippery slope with those 4 conditions and the need for it to be a social issue. And I think that summarizes, I think, Rachel's response to his critics. I think he might address a few other things I haven't mentioned, but I think I covered the important ones. Because again, his general idea is that we want to hire based on merit. We want to hire based on experience. It's just that these are subjective and allow implicit bias to enter. And so we need quotas to help limit the effect of those implicit biases. And again, he says also, I think, an important point that we are focusing on current biases and problems, not on the problems of history and whether those need to be rectified. That is a different argument. Take my social philosophy class. We talk a lot about whether reparations are owed due to past injustice, but that's not this class. That's a tough argument for sure. So that's a whole issue that quotas are not supposed to address. Again, quotas are about identifying current merit, current qualifications without that being corrupted by subjective and implicit biases. This is my other favorite part of the videos, is where I can say I think I've covered enough. Probably too much. Not too many mistakes this time. I'm pretty tired. I know. I feel bad. I'm like recording videos nonstop. I hope you guys are getting what you need out of this. I really don't like teaching this way, but if you guys are getting what you need out of it, then I'm happy. I really am. Anyhow, my favorite time. Let's get rid of some arm flap. Oh, I'll just do one arm today. I'm tired. Pat your back. That's another unit. You're wrapping up now. That's 8. Wow, time's flying, huh? So you're almost done with another, did I say unit? Module. I wish. Another unit would be great, but then that means an exam, and now we don't want to do that. Not yet. We got a little more time for that. That's next week's problem. But anyway, finish this module's quiz on prejudice and quotas. Maybe tweet a little. Be friendly in your tweets. I know this one can sometimes generate a little passion. Nothing wrong with passion. We talked about that in the video on emotion. Passion is good, but don't use the passion to crush your classmates. Use it to seek truth and work together as a team, because we're all after the truth, aren't we? That's a deep little point. I like that. Anyway, finish the module quiz, tweet a little. After that, we'll move on into the next module, which is probably going to be another spicy one, talking about the relationship between religion and morality. But that's later. You guys take it easy. You take care. Stay safe.